So it's live now, and I'll wait. It hasn't started on YouTube yet. I think it's about, oh, okay, we're live now. Hello everyone, welcome to the next webinar in our one-day Braille online event certified in 2017. I have the honor to introduce Henrique Moura, our next presenter. Henrique is a Cambridge CELTA, iCELT, and Delta tutor. He's also a CELTA assessor, and he has assessed me many times. He's a product coordinator at Seven Augusta, and he's a speaking examiner for the young learners in Cambridge Main Suite for Cambridge English. So without further ado, I know you have been waiting for this. Here's Henrique.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Okay, so thanks for having me here today. I'm here to talk to you a bit about the Delta, which is one of my favorite certificates, teaching certificates, and I hope you enjoy it. So if you have questions, we'll open to questions at the end. So first of all, for those who do not know what Delta is, it's an English language teaching qualifications for experienced teachers at a diploma level. And I think these two words, which are highlighted in yellow here, are quite interesting because it's important to understand what experienced and diploma mean. By experienced teacher, I mean someone who has had extensive experience in a variety of teaching contexts. That means you need to have taught at different levels of proficiency and in different contexts. So business English, general English, young learners, large groups, small groups, etc. It's important to have an appropriate level of English to teach at a range of levels. So ideally a C2 level or above. It's important to hold an initial teaching qualifications. It's not mandatory, but highly recommended because an initial teaching qualification helps pave the way for a Delta qualification. To muster the knowledge you need to have in order to apply for this certificate. And it's also important to give evidence of previous successful study that would allow you to follow the course. So it's important to give evidence that you are keeping abreast of new teaching trends, that you read articles, you read books, this kind of thing. So this is what I understand by experienced. Another thing is diploma. So unlike CELTA and iCELT, Delta is at a diploma level, and that means it has a credit value of 60 credits if you want to apply for an MA in TESOL. So each credit represents 1 hour of learning time. That's it. Then, apart from that, there is the Cambridge Teaching Framework, which is a way to classify teachers according to levels of development. And for a teacher to be able to start a Delta program, the teacher needs to be at the 3rd level of this framework, which is the proficiency level. Not language proficiency, but teaching proficiency. So CELTA would be at a foundation level, and it would help a teacher come from a foundation level to a developing level. Then there's iCELT that would help a teacher come from a developing level to a proficient level, and Delta helps the teacher come from a proficient level to an expert level. There is a really detailed description of the levels in Cambridge websites that all teachers can read at any time to understand what they're all about. And this can be accessed from the link below here in the presentation, or you can just Google it, Cambridge Teaching Framework, and you will find all the information about the frameworks and what each of the levels entail. Then, some people ask, how is delta different from ISELT? How is it different from CELTA? Can I take a delta if I don't have an ISELT or a CELTA? Well, the first thing I mentioned is that the delta is at a different level. So it's really important to have had previous experience at Cambridge to apply for a delta course, because this will really facilitate your life. As I said too, previous courses like CELTA and ISELT help pave the way if you want to take a delta. Apart from that, the delta is more demanding than other courses in terms of the amount of things you have to do and the amount of things you have to read. So that's it. So a little bit about the history of delta. Before that, there used to be two different certificates. There used to be the DTEFLA and DOTI. And the DTEFLA was a certificate for native teachers of English, and DOTI for no-native teachers of English. It existed until 1988. And then after that, the RSA, which is the Royal Society of Arts, created Delta, which was the unified certificate. And then in a partnership with Cambridge English, it became Delta, as it is known today. There is one thing, though. Before, Delta used to be an acronym for Diploma of English Language Teacher, of English Language Teaching to Adults. But in 2008, it changed for Delta in lowercase, because it's no longer an acronym. Because one of the things you can do in Delta is teach young learners. So it's not about teaching adults anymore. So Delta, unlike CELTA and ISELT, is now written in lowercase. So Delta is organized into 3 different modules, Module 1, Module 2, and Module 3, which can be taken at any time and in any order. You don't necessarily have to follow this order to take the modules. But Module 1 is an exam. It's just like CAE, CPE, in the sense that you need to study, take the test, and pass the test. Ideally, on a course to get prepared for the exam, but if you don't have a course near you, you can try to study on your own and then take the test. The test covers knowledge of language acquisition, language teaching, approaches and methodologies, language systems, language skills, learners' linguistic problems, resources and materials for teaching, and assessment. The test has 2 different papers. Each paper takes 1.5 hours. And one of the challenges of the test is the amount of things you have to do in the time you have. So this is why I think it's important to take a test, to understand how to best lay out answers to help you save time and score more points in the exam. Then there's Module 2, which is the practical part of the course. It involves a course, so there's no way you can take it independently. You need to be enrolled on a course. And during the course, basically what you have to do is write 4 lesson plans and teach 4 lessons, which are assessed. 3 of the lessons are internally assessed, and 1 of the lessons is externally assessed by a Delta assessor who will come and watch the lesson. You have to write 4 essays. The essays take about 2,500 words, and you need to write 1 professional development assignment too, which has 2,500 words as well. It doesn't seem much when I say, but in fact, you need to read quite a lot to write these essays and to plan lessons, so it's time-consuming. It's really time-consuming. And Module 3 is when you get to choose your specialism. There's a list of things you can see here. But basically what you have to do in Module 3 is choose 1 specialism, do some research, and write about the principal characteristics, about the main characteristics of this specialism, and then you have to develop a course for a group of students using this specialism. The list is extended, so there's basically everything in the list of specialisms. It's difficult to find something you want to talk about which isn't in the list of specialisms. Apart from that, there is Module 3 ELT Management, which is for people who want to work in school administration and school management. So you can do your Module 3 geared towards this specialism as well, management. And then the subspecialisms are academic management, human resources, customer service, and marketing. It's also a possibility. Then, I think that in order for you to prepare for a Delta, it's important that you have read lots of things, to have some previous knowledge to help you take the course. So when you take an ISELT, for instance, many of these things will appear in the course. So it helps. If you don't have this opportunity, and if you're taking a Delta straight away, these are some of the books I think everyone needs to read before taking the course. So my suggestion is, if you want to take a Delta, start by reading these books, and I'll say why I think these are important. The first one is About Language by Scott Thornberry. I think this is a quite interesting book because it talks about language awareness. So it's a language awareness course for teachers. It has lots of practical tasks. So basically the book is divided into spreadsheets, and then each spreadsheet is about a topic. The teacher can do a few activities, and then at the end of the book there is another spreadsheet with the answers and comments. So it's useful for self-study. And it is pretty similar to what teachers have to do in the exam, in the part where they have to analyze language. So I think doing About Language from cover to cover before the course is really an important tip. A second book I would suggest is The Study of Language by George Yule, which is basically a compendium of linguistics. So it's an introduction to various areas of language that brings major concepts in linguistics. And it's easy to understand. It's not very technical. And the sections, as I wrote here, are bite-sized. So it's easy for you to read, say, a chapter a day, a chapter a week before you take the course. It will not be overwhelming. And apart from that, the book also has some practical tasks for teachers to do to help them consolidate the contents of each of the units of the book. It's also very helpful for Module 1 because many of the things you will have to do in the test of Module 1 will appear in this book. So I dare say it's a sort of summary for those who want to take the test. So I would definitely recommend this book. The third book I would recommend is Sound Foundations by Adrian Underhill because it helps teachers gain some knowledge of phonology. Oftentimes when I interview teachers for the course, this is the area in which teachers have, say, less knowledge or need to develop more on. So I think that reading this book and doing the tests it provides is a good way to help you prepare for the exam. The book talks about segmental features, that is individual sounds of the language, and also suprasegmental features, which is connected speech and intonation. So the concepts there are easy to understand, there are practical tasks. So definitely it's one of the recommendations before Delta. The fourth book I would recommend is The Language Teaching Matrix by Jack Richards, which is a practicum of language teaching methodology. So you have chapters on reading, listening, speaking, grammar, but the chapters are not so superficial as other practicum. So I think it's pitched at a Delta level, and it's interesting for teachers to read this book to have an idea of what systems and skills, what the theory of different systems and skills entail. It also focuses on language curriculum development, materials development, teaching practice, and I think this book's also readable. It's possible for you to read it without following a course. It's not very complex, so I think it's a very important pre-Delta reading. And last but not least, I would recommend Discourse Analysis for Language Teachers because in Module 1, We talk about discourse a lot, and it's important that teachers have some previous knowledge. So this book by Michael McCarthy is a practical introduction to discourse. And it talks about spoken discourse and written discourse, which I think is important. And like the other books, it is interspersed with lots of different activities that the reader can do. So it's fundamental reading before the Delta. Apart from that, before you take a Delta course, I would suggest that you develop your knowledge of academic English, because this is one of the main problems for deltoids. The assignments are not very long. They're about 2,500 words. However, there are certain things you need to put in the assignment that cannot be left behind. So you need to have a very crisp style. You need to be able to say more using fewer words. And this is definitely one of the difficulties of deltoids. So it's important for anyone who wants to take the Delta to develop a crisp style of writing. It's important for you to know how to use, how to reference books in your assignment, because you need to show extensive background reading in all assignments, and you need to know how to reference your background reading. We recommend the Harvard model of referencing, but you can use any convention as long as you're consistent in your work. It's important for you to understand how to use standard terminology. And sometimes when deltoids are writing their assignments, they find lots of things on the internet which are interesting but not really standard. So it's important to use standard terminology in the assignments, because if you use non-standard terminology, you will have to define lots of things, and this will eat up on your words. So that's one of the things. Also, it's important that your language in assignments is accurate and clear. You don't have to write, you don't have to embellish your work with lots of beautiful words and sophisticated language, but it has to be clear and accurate and precise. So these are a few features of academic English that I think are important for anyone who wants to take a Delta. So things that need to be developed before the course. Then another thing I'd like to talk about is the difference between face-to-face courses and distance courses. Nowadays there are 4 distance courses available in the world and many face-to-face courses. But they have a few differences, I think. So one of them is that if you take a face-to-face course, it has to be done completely face-to-face. So you need to go to a center and see input sessions, have contact hours with your tutor, etc. However, if you do a distance Delta, you can do lots of things online. However, some of the courses still require an orientation week or an orientation fortnight. So you need to end up spending 1 or 2 weeks in the UK or somewhere else where they're offering the orientation. So not all programs are fully online. One advantage of the face-to-face Delta, in my opinion, is that I have 2 local tutors who will help you with your lesson planning and assignment writing, and who will assess you. When you take a distance Delta, you will have only 1 local tutor, which is the regional tutor, and there is 1 online tutor. So the online tutor marks your assignments, and the local tutor sees your lessons. So this is how the work is divided among tutors. In a face-to-face Delta, both tutors do everything. Usually a distance Delta, thinking about Module 2, takes 3 months. So you have 3 months to write all assignments and lesson plans and teach the lessons, which might be little if you have to work and do many other things. So depending on your workload, you might need more time. And this is something you can have in a face-to-face Delta, because different courses have different lengths. Another face-to-face Delta is that you have face-to-face support. There's a typo here. It should be only 1 O. Face-to-face support. And when you take a distance Delta, you have limited support. So usually you have to wait for certain specific times when he can have support, and the amount of support is also limited. The amount of times your ODT can read your assignments and sort of thing. In a face-to-face course, you end up teaching your own groups or a group of volunteer students if you don't have groups, and if you work on a distance delta, okay, you might teach your own groups, but you might also be sharing groups with students, groups of students with other teachers. Then if you take a face-to-face delta, you can also choose a specialism in your own contexts, because you'll have support from your local tutor, and if you take distance delta, things will end up being more general, and if you take a distance course abroad, even more general. One advantage of the face-to-face course too is that you have the tutors here in Brazil if you take the course here, and if you take a distance delta, you will need to find someone who can be your tutor, who has the qualifications to be your tutor, and this is something you'll have to do on your own, because the centers offering distance delta do not help candidates find local tutors. It's the candidate's responsibility. So, and then you might be asking yourself, why take a delta? A few of the advantages of taking the course is that you will evidently improve your teaching skills. It will be possible for you to elevate your career to the next level and apply for more senior positions. So many senior positions will require for a delta. You will gain lots of valuable skills for your career. You'll be better able to examine your beliefs and practices critically, in the sense that you can teach a lesson and think about what happened, what didn't happen, what worked, what didn't work, why, and what you can do to change things. If you want to take an MA TESOL abroad, it will help you with some credits, so maybe you can use your delta to help you with credits, and of course you will take pride in taking such a certificate, which is accepted globally. So I think this is it. I finished my quick presentation. Thank you very much, and I think we're now open to questions.
Hi, Henrique. I have two questions that have already popped up during the presentation.
Okay.
The first one is from Andrea Câmara, and she asks, are freelance teachers who hold a CELTA but have no recent experience teaching at schools eligible to take the Delta?
I think each case is a case. So the best thing to do is apply for a course and to go through the application test, and talk to a tutor, because a tutor will be able to tell you what you still have to develop. So usually when you do the application test, we know which aspects of teaching and background knowledge you still have to work on, so we can advise, but each case is a case. It's difficult to give you a one-size-fits-all answer.
Sure. So I think that's a good answer. Talk to a tutor.
Mm-hmm.
So next question is from Danilo Ribeiro. Is there a way of telling if a teacher is eligible for the Delta? How do I know I'm ready for the Delta?
Well, at the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned a few of the characteristics you need to have if you want to take a Delta. So you need to have a high level of English. You need to have background knowledge. You need to have experience. And then again, you have to apply and see what a tutor has to say, because the tutor will know better. But in the case of Danilo, like, he has an ISELT, so I think it's, yeah, he's ready.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I would say having done the ISELT and having done some reading problem points out that you're ready. I mean, I suppose it's like having a child. You're never really ready. You have to kind of go in and take the plunge.
Yeah, sure.
All right, next one is from Vinicius Tavares. How are the Delta or an MA in TESOL different?
They're totally different, because in an MA in TESOL, you'll focus on something. So for example, in my MA, I'm focusing on teacher training, and it's something you don't have in your Delta. Delta is about general teaching. So general teaching methodologies and methods, approaches. an MA not necessarily can have an MA in teacher training, in technology, in young learners. So it's more specific, really.
And I'd also add that MA often don't have a practical module, right? And that's a big deal in the Delta.
I mean, if you want to become a CELTA tutor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is, if you want to become a CELTA tutor, one of the requirements is having a Delta or an MA with a practical component. And then if your MA doesn't have a practical component, then you need to do a Delta. But yes, most MAs do not have a practical component, but still, if it's not what you're going for, like if you're doing an MA to become a teacher trainer, then you need to study teacher training theory. You don't need so much classroom practice, so it doesn't make sense to have a practical component. You see.
All right. And his next question is from Eric Wendling. He says, in module 2, if you failed the assessed lesson, do you have to do 4 assignments and teach the lessons again?
It depends on your performance during the course. So if your internal work is a pass and you fail the external assessment, then you are referred and have to do that lesson again. So only 1 assignment and 1 lesson. But if you fail that a second time, then you have to do everything again.
All right, thanks. I have another question from Bárbara Furtado. What are the most common pitfalls you come across in terms of Brazilian teachers? So what do our teachers do wrong, Henrique?
In terms of writing or in terms of teaching?
I would say, I suppose she's thinking of both of them.
Okay, in Delta, in terms of teaching, I think the problems are the same problems any other teacher has. So really, I don't see much difference between Brazilian teachers and other nationalities. But in terms of writing, we Brazilians tend to write too much. So, and then it's difficult for us to say everything we have to say in 2,500 words. So developing a crisp style in academic writing, I think, is one of the difficulties.
All right. I have another question. I think this is from Natalia because she's using the Brout account. Mm-hmm. How can we tell what counts as standard terminology?
Well, if you go to Cambridge website, there is a recommended bibliography list. So I think that's a good measure. But usually thinking about established authors in each area.
All right. Yeah, I suppose I think as you're explaining that, Natalia, what I was thinking was, for example, and this is a very basic example. If you talk about verbs in the infinitive, there are places that will mention these verbs as base form of the verb, and there are places that will mention it as something else. And if every time you write or you quote a source, you're going to have a different terminology for this, you need to explain what they are every time. And this adds up your adds up to your word count. Is that what you had in mind, Henrique?
Perhaps, but also, for instance, we can say, thinking about skills, if you say this is a just reading activity, I would say that this is pretty much standard terminology. But if you call it an easy reading task, it's not a standard terminology. See, so if you use terminology which is not standard, then you would have to describe it in your assignments and say who said that. It's not that you cannot use them, but then you're going to end up using more words. And then if you're going to describe lots of terminology that are non-standard, you will fail to mention things that are important to be mentioned in your assignment. You see?
All right. So, guys, if you have any more questions, please write them in the YouTube chat. Natalia asked, so you have mentioned some of the books that you have recommended to read before the Delta?
Before the Delta. Because these will have to be read during the course. But if you read them before the course, it's much better because you'll be better prepared for the course. And those books I recommended, I think, are more, I think they're easier to read. So really, I think it's a good thing to read them before the course.
Right. But what I can say is once you start the course, you're going to receive an extensive, very extensive reading list, right?
It, yes and no. If you're thinking about module 2, there is an extensive reading list, but you have to read things that have to do with your assignments, because unlike Delta and iCELT, in Delta you get to choose what your assignments will be about. So if you want to talk about reading, you can. If you want to talk about grammar, you can. So you get to choose the topics of your assignment. So you'll have to read things that relate to your assignment. So you don't necessarily have to read the whole list of things.
Right. And I also feel like I read a lot of chapters rather than full books, right? Chapters that are relevant to the things that I'm writing.
Exactly.
All right. I have another question now from Cynthia Rodriguez. She says, I've asked this before, but here it goes again. You have spoken about going from Delta to a master's. What about from a master's to a Delta? Who can I contact and get some maybe sort of equivalence?
I'm not sure what she means, but if she's talking about becoming a CELTA tutor, then if the master's doesn't have a practical component, then I think it would be important for her to have a module 2. I think she would be exempted from modules 1 and 3, but not module 2, because this is what usually happens. But when it comes to becoming a tutor, it all depends on Cambridge, because we need to send the application and it's up to them to decide whether the person is eligible or not. Yeah.
But I think maybe what you meant as well is, you said that if you have done the Delta and you want to do a master's abroad, you can eliminate some of the hours of the course.
Yeah.
And if you already have a master's, can you eliminate any modules from the Delta?
No. As I said, it depends on what you want to do with your Delta, because, I mean, you won't be exempted from writing 1 or 2 assignments, for example, and get the certificate. You'll have to do everything. But if you want to do something that requires a Delta, maybe you don't have to do everything. You can do just module 2, which is the practical part.
Right. I see. Any more questions, everybody? I think we're good. Thanks very much, Henrique. That was very enlightening.
Sorry, there's another question here. Sorry, by Eduardo. Eduardo, would you like to ask it?
Hi, Henrique.
Hello.
I have actually 2 questions. The first one of them is, do you think a person who finishes the iCELT can start the Delta right away, or you think we should have a break to mature?
It depends on the person. It's possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And another one, which module should we start with? Do you think we should go for module 1, 2, and 3, or?
I think it makes sense.
Okay.
It makes sense
really?
Because when you do module 2, you need to have lots of background knowledge to be able to write your assignments. And if you do module 1 first, it gives you this background knowledge. So I think it makes sense to start from module 1, even though it's not mandatory. I just feel it makes sense.
Can I add something here, Henrique? I did them in order, and I think it helped me. Each module helped the next one. So what I studied for the test in module 1 helped my terminology in module 2. What I did to develop my lessons in module 2 helped the course that I had to create for module 3, and so on. I agree with Henrique. It makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Right. So again, thanks. Henrique, Edu are going to show us how to get the certificate for this webinar.
Yes, I am. So for everyone who's attending the webinar, if you attended the other ones, it's pretty much the same. There is a bit.ly that you can access. It's bit.ly/Cambridge, all lowercase, Delta, all uppercase. And then there's a form you have to fill in. You just type your name and your email address, and then we will receive your info, and your certificate will be ready by February 25th. We're going to post a link on the Braille community, and we'll send a notification to your email. So I think that's all. Thank you, Henrique, for the amazing webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. People have said great things in the chat, man. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. I can't see anything. Where can I see these things?
On YouTube. That's where the questions are coming from. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And remember, everyone, the certificate, it will not be available after some time. So you need to log in now if you want to the certificate, and you'll receive the certificate within a month. But you need to fill it in now. bit.ly/Cambridge in lowercase, Delta in all capitals. Thank you all for your participation and understanding of the technical problems at the beginning.
Thank you.